Manglik Dosha. You must have heard a lot about this because this is one dosh which has gained a lot of popularity over the years. I mean, you must have seen it in everything from serials to series to movies and all sorts of places where a story is being told. You know, such and such person is Manglik and therefore if they marry somebody, they are likely to die. Okay, these kind of things have been propagated with respect to a Manglik placement. Even in the regular marriage bureaus where you have panditjis and matchmakers making matches, they point it out. Even in the astrology apps, you will see there is a specific section, Manglik Dosha or not, how to remove Manglik Dosha. I'm sorry to say this, but actually Manglik Dosha removal is a multi-million-dollar industry. I am not kidding. You can hate me for it, but it's a fact. Okay. Now, what exactly is this dosh? Let's talk about it. So, Mars, you need to understand what Mars is as a planet, not from the perspective of traits in an individual, but from the perspective of the energy of what this planet is. Mars is, simply put, the energy of your solar plexus. Mars is the energy of your willpower, your focus, your ability to stay disciplined and focused in a particular direction. Okay, Mars represents everything that has to do with your basic tendencies as an animal. Okay, basic tendencies as an individual. Mars deals with everything from sex to searching for food, pursuing prey, in the sense that pursuing anything that can fulfill you. Okay, that is Mars. Defense, defending yourself or attacking if required as part of a social structure or social group. Okay, Mars is also representative of things like your ability to work with tools. Okay, build a fire, camping, all sorts of things. This is what Mars is. Mars is an energy which is a very basic energy with respect to our sustenance on this physical plane. Okay, that is why men are associated with Mars and women are associated with Venus, because men have more testosterone, they are more aligned towards these sort of activities. Okay, that is what Mars represents. So therefore, if you're talking about a dosh, as in a fault, then that essentially points out to the misalignment or the misdirection of Martian energy in a person's life. Manglik means that your Mars placement is such that your energies are not expressed in the most optimum fashion. What energies are we talking about? The basic energies that have to do with living life and sustaining life on this material physical plane. Your ability to take action when necessary, your ability to fight when necessary, your ability to stay focused at a particular goal, your ability to, even your sexual abilities, okay? Your abilities of pursuing something in order to have it, in order to get it. This is what Martian energy is all about. So, it is said that some placements for Mars are not correctly aligned with the adequate expression of this energy, and these placements can create problems in married life or relationships in general, but specifically married life. That is essentially the concept and the hypothesis of the Manglik Dosha. Now, how much of that is really true? Look, first of all, you've got to understand that Mars is considered, out of 12 houses in the chart, okay, Mars is considered to be forming Manglik Dosha whenever it's in the first house, it's in the second house, it's in the fourth house, even in the seventh house, in the 8th house also, in the 12th house also. So this is essentially almost like 50% of the chart. Now, is that really accurate? I mean, does that really make sense? Well, to be honest, it does, doesn't it? Because not everybody is athletic. There are only very few people who are really good at that. There are not many people who are great engineers. There are only very few who are good at that. Not many people are great with managing the temper and being focused, exercising exceptional willpower, right? There's only a handful of people. So, in some respect, you can say that yes, people with Manglik placements, they can be really successful in life. But in terms of the expression of their Martian energy, it's suboptimal, to say the least. Okay? Now, what happens when you are a Manglik person and you're marrying somebody who is not a Manglik? Okay? Let's say you have Mars placed in the second house and you're marrying somebody. I'm not taking genders here, just two individuals, okay? Let's say you're a person who has Mars in the second house, you're marrying somebody who has Mars, let's say, in the 10th house. Okay? So, just by marrying them, just by them marrying you, is something bad going to happen to them? No. See, but there is something that can happen, which I'll explain. When you have Mars in the second house, the reason it is called a Manglik placement is because Mars is your energy. Mars is your focus, Mars is your willpower, Mars is your drive, Mars is representative of your basic instincts, and when that goes into the second house of stability, the second house of assets, the second house of family, the second house of speech, the second house of using your voice, your throat chakra, this can create a sort of situation where you are an individual who tends to say things that hurts people. You're not doing it intentionally. You may be an amazing friend. I have a friend who's very close to me who has this placement, by the way. Okay? So you can be an amazing person. It's just that your tendency is to say things which are way bolder than can be tolerated. Your tendency towards building assets, towards creating assets, towards working with your family, is such that it is not the most optimal in terms of building stability. So it is quite possible that when Mars in the second house, you are the kind of individual who puts a lot more energy into creating stability than is required, who puts a lot more energy into the ideas of family, who is very deeply invested into your values. You're not able to compromise on your values easily. These are great traits. They can make you very successful in terms of a career, in terms of life. But when it comes to relationships, this can create problems. This can create problems. Why? Because you see, there is a reason that the sign of Taurus has been allotted to Venus, that Venus controls the sign of Taurus. How do you create stability? You create stability, you create a foundation by allowing things to be, by being more of a soft power when it comes to your values. In terms of voicing out what you believe in or you do not believe in, what you stand for or you do not, you have to practice what is called being a soft power. Because the more you are aggressive, the more you are dominant about these significations, the more chances there is of a conflict taking place. Now, this conflict can be something, which is active in terms of you actually creating it. Or this conflict can be something which is just happening in your life energetically. Like you cannot really help it, but something or the other is always happening with respect to your family, with respect to your foundation. Okay? Now, when you bring this sort of an energy into the life of a person, let's say who has Mars in the 10th house, you will find that there can be some difficulties in terms of you guys matching together, even though both of them are Earth placements, because the sign of Capricorn and the sign of Taurus both correspond to what? Earth signs. Okay? But the thing is, Mars is an energy that needs to be put into the most optimum container that allows that energy to grow. Okay? So let's say I take your Martian energy and I put it in the 10th house, the 10th house of career, the 10th house of the forest, the 10th house of, being out there in the thick of the action, in the middle of your competition, braving it out in the world. Okay? And there's a lot of growth that you need to do as a person If let's say you're building a business, if you're in a high position in a government job or something of that sort. Why? Because the amount of effort that you are required to put in, the amount of aggression that you have to show will often fall short in front of the challenge that is there in front of you. Okay, so this is, let's say, your Martian energy as much as you have naturally. In the 10th house of everything that is out there. Okay, and the status that you have to create, the order that you have to build, the discipline that you need to have to be able to do it, the focus that you need to show to achieve those things. It is a lot, and so you will have to work hard to continuously grow this energy and also develop your Mars. You will have to learn new things, you will have to learn new tactics, you will make a few mistakes, but you will learn from them, and so you'll constantly be in a state where you are constantly challenged by the 10th house when it comes to your Mars. That is why Mars in the 10th house can make a person, great. It's one of the most powerful placements for Mars to be, but it's also one of the most difficult placements because you have to work hard. You have to continuously develop your Mars. You take Mars, you put it in the 2nd house, there is very little room for Mars to grow here. And what that can result in, that can result into impulsive tendencies. Because over here, the container is quite small, and this is, let's say, the size of your Martian energy. The container is small. Why? Because the significations and matters all have to do with what? They have to do with the foundation, they have to do with stability, they have to do with assets, they have to do with your family, they have to do with your values. These are pretty much things that you have to just allow to be, that you have to leave alone. Okay? So let's say these two people get married, one with Mars in the 2nd house, one with Mars in the 10th house. The Mars in the 10th house person is often going to admire the Mars in the 2nd house person for their ability to speak the truth and for their passion for creating assets and focusing on family and how much they hold on to their values. But quite often Mars in the 10th house person is going to find Mars in the 2nd house person as excessively argumentative, impulsive. Okay? Can that really lead to the death of the Mars in 10th house person? Not really. You need to understand that death, when we talk about, that is more metaphorical. In the same way that in the Tara system, the 7th Tara is called the Nedhan Tara. Nedhan meaning death. Now, does a planet placed in the Nedhan Tara actually cause death? In my experience, what I've seen is that mostly that sort of a placement results in mental stresses, mental anxieties, mental health problems. Okay? So if a person with the Manglik Dosh, let's say, marries another person who has a very good placement of Mars, yes, you will probably bring some sort of mental stresses to that person. It'll be a little bit difficult. It will probably deviate that person from being able to do what they want to do best. But there are different levels to this dosha, because you also have to look at the nakshatra placement, you have to look at the synastry as well. What do I mean by synastry? Well, let's say this person who has Mars in the 2nd house has Mars placed in Taurus, and let's say this person who has Mars placed in the 10th house, they have their Venus in Taurus. Okay? This can bring about a lot of sexual chemistry. Because your Mars, even though it's in the 2nd house, is falling right on top of the Venus of the other person. So this impulsive nature of yours, this ability to, just hold on to your truths and, not concede an inch, this very dynamic sort of a nature, often outspoken natures of yours, can be very positively perceived by somebody, let's say, who has a Venus in Taurus placement, because it excites them. It appeals to the femininity inside them. So everybody has feminine and masculine natures, right? Right? So irrespective of gender, this is how things can act. This is how things can play out. So whenever you're looking at a Manglik Dosh, just by looking at the placement of Mars, if you ascertain, okay, this is a dosh, these are the kind of problems that it's going to create, it's an oversimplification. Unfortunately, we are living in times of oversimplification of Vedic astrology. Okay, and so that is why these things come up. let's take another example. Let's take Mars in the 7th house for one person, and let's say the other person has Mars in the 3rd house. Now Mars in the 7th house, the problem with this placement is that once again the 7th house is ruled by the sign of Libra, which is naturally owned by Venus. Balance, relationships, okay, a sort of order that the sign of Libra represents. These are things that are achieved by letting things be. This is a very passive energy. How do you forge long-term partnerships? By a lot of space. Things are not always going to be balanced out. When you have the sign of the scales, it means sometimes it's going to be 70-30, sometimes it's going to be 60-40, sometimes it's going to be 20-80. You cannot really ascertain that this is how a balance should be and it has to be maintained at all times. No, it takes a while for you to balance things out in relationship. When you have Mars in the 7th house, quite often there is nothing wrong with you. You give way more attention, importance, energy and focus to the area of relationships than is required. You are not supposed to give as much attention in that area as your Mars in 7th house actually does. This can also give a very sexual nature to the individual. Why? Because, sexual tendencies are also what? Martian tendencies, but these are tendencies of union. Okay, so Mars over here can make you sexually, a bit too active because you're constantly desiring partnership, you're constantly desiring love, you're constantly desiring union, which can be uncomfortable for a person who, let's say, who has Mars in the 3rd house. Because when you have Mars in the 3rd house, once again, this is Martian energy, this is the container. For them, they have to put in a lot more effort in the things that they have to do. They are tough individuals. But they did not become tough just by Mars being there. They become tough by that Mars doing things in the 3rd house that makes them tough. Okay, so this is why when you have a Manglik placement, you are said to be best matched with another person who has that Manglik placement, because you will be able to see the imbalances of Martian energy in each other and understand and make room for that. Mars, when it's very well placed, can give a person who is so focused that they can absolutely love their spouse, but if they have to work 15 hours a day, they have to work 15 hours a day. That's it. That is just the nature of Martian energy. It's very, very focused. And so if you are working with somebody else who has Mars placed in, let's say, the 4th house, or let's say, the 12th house, they need a lot more time to work with their other planets to balance out this Martian effect. Okay, I hope this is making sense. The entire concept, the way that I'm trying to explain to you is, you have to look at Mars as energy, because essentially that is what it is. And Manglik placements are nothing more than energy mismatches. There's nothing wrong at all with this placement. It's just that if you also have a Manglik placement, then you'll be better suited to another person. But that's not the end of the story, because there are a lot of other factors also that you need to take into account. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel so that you never miss all the wonderful content that I post here. I post a ton of content here, lots of different types of content, from self-help, spirituality, self-improvement, spiritual growth, astrology, numerology. So do check that out. Push the bell icon so that you can be notified every single time I post. And if you want a personal session with me, check out the link given in the description box. It's going to take you to my website. Over there, you'll have to fill a contact form. I'll review it and I'll get back to you with a time and a date for the session. Thank you so much. Take care. Hari Om.